Hello, and welcome. Today, we are going to explore a topic that is incredibly important for the safety of our medicines. Yet most of us have never heard of it. It's called ICH Q3D. Now, that name might sound a bit like a secret code or something out of a science fiction film, but its purpose is actually very simple and very reassuring. ICH Q3D is a set of international guidelines designed to control the amount of harmful metals, often called elemental impurities, in the medicines we take every day. Think of it as a rule book for pharmaceutical companies to ensure their products are as pure and safe as they can possibly be. These rules help protect you and your family. You might be wondering why we need such a specific set of rules. For a very long time, the methods for checking for these impurities were quite old and not very precise. It was like trying to find a single grain of sand on a vast beach using only your eyes. The old methods could only detect large amounts of contamination. However, science has moved on. We now have incredibly sensitive technology that can find even the tiniest traces of these elements. The ICH Q3D guidelines were created to bring the industry up to date with modern science, setting clear, health-based limits for 24 different elements that could pose a risk to our health. The ICH part of the name stands for the International Council for Harmonization. This is a group of experts from regulatory bodies and the pharmaceutical industry from around the world, including Europe, Japan, and the United States. Their main job is to agree on a single set of technical requirements for medicines. By harmonizing the rules, they make it simpler for companies to develop and sell safe medicines across different countries. This means a medicine approved in one country can more easily meet the standards of another, which is good for both patients and the companies that make these vital products. It creates a global standard for safety. So, in simple terms, ICH Q3D is all about keeping our medicines clean from tiny, unwanted metallic guests. It's a modern, science-based approach to a very old problem. By understanding these guidelines, we can appreciate the immense effort that goes into making sure the pill you take for a headache or the injection you receive at the hospital is not only effective, but also free from hidden dangers. This framework is a cornerstone of modern pharmaceutical safety, working silently in the background to protect public health every single day. Let's delve a little deeper into what these impurities are and why they matter so much. So, what exactly are these elemental impurities? The term sounds quite technical, but the concept is straightforward. They are tiny amounts of chemical elements, mostly metals, that can find their way into medicines during the manufacturing process. They are not supposed to be there, and they serve no therapeutic purpose. The most well-known of these are what we often call heavy metals, such as lead, mercury, arsenic, and cadmium. You have probably heard of these before, as they are known to be toxic to humans, even in very small quantities. They can cause a wide range of health problems if they build up in the body over time. These unwanted elements can sneak into our medicines from many different places. Imagine the long journey a medicine takes before it gets to your local pharmacy. It starts with raw materials, which might be sourced from the earth or created through chemical processes. These raw materials could naturally contain trace amounts of metals from the soil or water. Then, there is the manufacturing equipment itself. The large stainless steel vats, pipes, and reactors used to mix and create the medicine can, over time, ever so slightly leach tiny metal particles into the product. Even the water used in the process, or the containers the final medicine is stored in, can be sources of contamination. The risk these impurities pose depends on several factors. First, which element is it? Some, like arsenic and mercury, are highly toxic and can harm the nervous system. Others, like chromium or nickel, might be less dangerous in small doses but can still cause problems, especially for people who need to take a medicine for many years. The second factor is the amount, or concentration, of the impurity. A tiny trace might be harmless, but higher levels can be dangerous. Finally, it matters how you take the medicine. An impurity in a cream you put on your skin is very different from one in a medicine that is injected directly into your bloodstream. This is why controlling them is so critical. For a healthy person, a single low dose of a contaminated medicine might not cause any noticeable harm. But think about someone who is already very ill, or a baby, or an elderly person. Their bodies are much more vulnerable. Also, consider patients with chronic conditions, like diabetes or high blood pressure. who take medicine every single day for the rest of their lives. For them, even minuscule amounts of a toxic element could slowly accumulate in their bodies, potentially leading to serious health issues down the line. That is the hidden danger ICH Q3D is designed to prevent. Now that we understand what elemental impurities are and where they might come from, how do pharmaceutical companies actually go about controlling them? They can't just test every single batch of medicine for all 24 elements. That would be incredibly expensive and time-consuming. Instead, ICH Q3D requires them to use a smart, proactive approach called a risk assessment. This is essentially a detective story, where the company's scientists become investigators. Their mission is to systematically identify any potential risks of contamination and figure out how likely they are to occur, long before the medicine is even made. The first step in this investigation is to gather all the available information. The team will look at every single ingredient that goes into the medicine. This includes the active pharmaceutical ingredient, the part that makes you better, and all the other substances, known as excipients, which are things like fillers, binders, and coatings that help make the pill a pill. They will ask questions like, where did this ingredient come from? Is it mined from the ground? Is it made using a chemical process that involves a metal catalyst? The suppliers of these raw materials must provide data about any known impurities. It's like creating a detailed profile for every component. Next, the investigators turn their attention to the manufacturing process itself. They create a detailed map of the entire production line, from the moment the raw materials enter the factory to the point where the finished tablets are sealed in a bottle. They examine every piece of equipment that the product will touch. What is the big mixing tank made of? Are the pipes made of high-grade stainless steel that is unlikely to leach metals, or are they older? They also consider other factors, like the water used for cleaning and processing, as it could contain its own mineral impurities. Every step is scrutinized for potential weak spots where contamination could occur. Based on all this information, the team can start to build a picture of the overall risk. They make an educated scientific judgment about which elemental impurities are likely to be present and in what amounts. For example, if a raw material is known to be mined from a region with high levels of arsenic in the soil, then arsenic becomes a high-risk element that needs careful attention. On the other hand, if the entire process uses brand new high-quality equipment and highly purified ingredients, the overall risk of contamination might be very low. This initial assessment is a crucial first step that guides all the subsequent actions the company will take. Once the initial risk assessment has been done, the scientific detectives need to dig a little deeper. Their goal is to pinpoint the exact sources of any potential contamination. This phase is all about connecting the dots between the elements of concern and the specific parts of the drug manufacturing process. It's not enough to say, there might be lead in our product. The company needs to figure out precisely where that lead could be coming from. This detailed investigation allows them to focus their control efforts where they are needed most, making the process both safer and more efficient. One of the primary areas they investigate is the drug substance itself, which is the main active ingredient. Many active ingredients are created through complex chemical reactions. Sometimes, these reactions require a catalyst to make them happen faster or more efficiently. These catalysts are often metals, such as palladium, platinum, or rhodium. While most of the catalyst is removed during the purification process, tiny, trace amounts can sometimes remain in the final ingredient. Therefore, the team must carefully review the synthesis process and determine if any metal catalysts were used, making them a likely source of specific elemental impurities that need to be monitored. Another major focus is the excipients, the non-active ingredients that make up the bulk of a pill or liquid medicine. Things like calcium carbonate, a filler, or titanium dioxide, a whitening agent, are often derived from mined minerals. As we know, minerals dug from the earth can naturally contain a variety of other elements. A company must therefore obtain detailed information from its suppliers about the origin and purity of these excipients. If an excipient comes from a natural source, it has a higher potential to introduce impurities like lead or arsenic compared to a synthetically produced excipient made in a controlled lab environment. Finally, the team must scrutinize the manufacturing equipment and the container closure systems. The container closure system is just a technical term for the bottle, cap, and seal that protect the medicine. Imagine a liquid medicine stored in a glass bottle for months. If the glass has imperfections or a certain chemical composition, it could potentially leach elements like arsenic into the liquid. Similarly, the rubber stopper on a vial for an injectable drug could be a source of zinc or other elements used in its production. By evaluating every single component that touches the drug, the company can create a complete map of all potential contamination pathways. After all the detective work of the risk assessment is complete, it's time to look for actual evidence. This is where analytical testing comes in. If the risk assessment suggests that there is a reasonable chance that a specific elemental impurity could be present in the final medicine, the company can't just assume it's okay. They need to test the product to get real data. This testing phase provides the proof needed to confirm that the levels of any impurities are safely below the limits set by the ICH Q3D guidelines. It's the scientific equivalent of trust but verify. The technology used for this testing is, honestly, incredibly sophisticated. Scientists use powerful instruments with names like inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometry, or, ICP-MS for short. You can think of this machine as a super-sensitive metal detector. It can find and measure elements at concentrations as low as parts per billion. That's like finding one specific drop of water in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. The process involves taking a small sample of the medicine, dissolving it, and then turning it into a fine mist that is passed through a very hot plasma flame. The instrument then analyzes the light given off to identify which elements are present and in what exact quantity. The company must decide when and what to test. They don't necessarily have to test every single batch of the final drug product. If their risk assessment showed that a particular raw material is the main potential source of an impurity, they might choose to test that raw material before it is even used. By controlling the quality of the ingredients coming into the factory, they can prevent the problem from occurring in the first place. This is honestly a much smarter and more proactive approach. However, in some high-risk situations, they may decide that routine testing of the finished medicine is necessary to guarantee its safety. The testing methods themselves must also be very reliable. A company can't just use any old method. They must prove that their chosen testing procedure is validated. This means they have to conduct a series of experiments to show that the method is accurate, precise, and specific for the element it is designed to measure. They need to be sure that the results they get are correct and trustworthy. All of this information about the testing methods and the results becomes a critical part of the documentation that proves the company is following the ICH Q3D rules and producing a safe product. Once a company has identified the risks and perhaps confirmed them with testing, the next logical step is to establish a control strategy. A control strategy is simply the company's official plan for keeping elemental impurities at a safe level. It's not a one-time fix. It's an ongoing system of checks and balances designed to ensure that every batch of medicine produced meets the strict safety standards of ICH Q3D. This plan is tailored to the specific risks identified for that particular product and its manufacturing process. It's a bit like having a health and safety plan for your medicine. One of the most common control methods is to set specifications for raw materials. This means the company tells its suppliers that they will only accept ingredients that have been proven to contain less than a certain amount of a specific impurity. For example, they might have a rule that the calcium phosphate they use as a filler must contain less than 1 part per million of lead. The supplier would then have to test their material and provide a certificate of analysis to prove it meets this requirement. This upstream control is often the most effective way to manage impurities, as it stops the problem at the source. Another part of the control strategy involves the manufacturing process itself. The company might implement specific purification steps designed to remove certain elements. For instance, if a chemical reaction uses a palladium catalyst, the process will include one or more steps, such as filtration or crystallization, that are proven to remove the palladium to an acceptable level. They might also have strict rules about the equipment used, specifying that only certain grades of stainless steel are allowed, and implementing regular cleaning and maintenance procedures to prevent the equipment from degrading and leaching metals into the product. The control strategy must also be dynamic. It's not something you write down once and then file away forever. The company must periodically review its risk assessment and control measures. Perhaps they change the supplier of a key ingredient, or maybe they install a new piece of manufacturing equipment. Any change could potentially introduce a new risk, so the assessment must be updated. This ongoing monitoring ensures that the safety of the medicine is maintained throughout its entire life cycle. It's a continuous process of vigilance to protect patient health. It demonstrates a commitment to quality that goes beyond simple testing. In the world of pharmaceutical manufacturing, there is a saying, "If it wasn't documented, it didn't happen." This is especially true when it comes to complying with guidelines like ICH Q3D. Meticulous documentation is not just boring paperwork. It is the essential proof that a company has done its due diligence to ensure the safety of its products. This paper trail, which is mostly digital these days, provides a complete record of the risk assessment, the testing, the control strategies, and all the decisions made along the way. It allows regulators to review the company's work and verify that everything has been done correctly. The core of this documentation is the Risk Assessment Report. This comprehensive document is like the final report from our scientific detectives. It needs to clearly explain the entire thought process. It will list every material and process step that was considered. It will detail the potential sources of each of the 24 elemental impurities and provide a scientific justification for why certain elements were identified as high risk and others as low risk. The report must be logical, clear, and based on solid scientific principles so that anyone, including a government inspector, can follow the reasoning and agree with the conclusions. If any testing was performed, all of that data must be carefully recorded and stored. This includes not just the final results, but also all the details about how the tests were conducted. What instrument was used? When was it last calibrated? Who performed the test? What were the exact steps in the testing procedure? This level of detail is crucial because it ensures the results are reproducible and trustworthy. It allows another scientist to repeat the experiment and get the same result, which is a fundamental principle of good science. Without this supporting information, the test results themselves are meaningless. Finally, the documentation must summarize the overall control strategy. It should clearly state what measures the company has put in place to manage the identified risks. This could include the specifications for raw materials, the specific in-process controls, and any routine testing schedules. This documentation serves as the company's official commitment to safety. It is a living document that must be kept up to date whenever there are changes to the product or process. Good documentation provides transparency and accountability, and it is the ultimate proof that a company is taking its responsibility to protect patients seriously. Even with the best risk assessments and control strategies in place, things can sometimes go wrong. A company might receive a batch of raw material that is unexpectedly contaminated, or a piece of equipment might fail in a way that introduces impurities. So, what happens if routine testing reveals that a batch of medicine contains an elemental impurity at a level that is higher than the permitted daily exposure limit set by ICH Q3D? This is a serious situation, and companies must have a clear and robust plan for how to respond to protect public health. The very first action is to quarantine the affected batch. This means the medicine is immediately isolated and put on hold, so that there is absolutely no chance it can be released and sent to pharmacies or hospitals. The safety of patients is the #1 priority. The company will then launch a full-scale investigation to find out what went wrong. This is known as a root cause analysis. Was it a problem with a supplier? Did a specific machine malfunction? Was there a human error in the process? The goal is to find the exact source of the contamination to prevent it from ever happening again. The investigation will involve retesting the product and possibly testing samples from earlier stages of the manufacturing process to pinpoint where the impurity was introduced. The company will review all of its documentation, including records from suppliers and maintenance logs for the equipment. If the source of the problem is found to be a particular supplier, that supplier might be disqualified until they can prove they have fixed their own quality issues. If the problem was with the company's own equipment or process, they must implement what are called corrective and preventive actions, or CAPAs, to fix the issue and ensure it is not repeated. What happens to the contaminated batch of medicine? In almost all cases, it will be destroyed. It is simply not worth the risk to try and fix a product that has failed such a critical safety test. The financial loss to the company can be significant, but it is a necessary cost of ensuring public safety. The company must also report the incident to the relevant regulatory authorities, such as the FDA in the United States or the EMA in Europe. They have to be transparent about the problem and explain what they have done to correct it. This entire process demonstrates the system working as it should. A problem is identified, contained, and fixed before any harm can come to a patient. After exploring all the detailed steps of risk assessments, testing, and controls, we can now step back and appreciate the big picture. Why does all this effort matter? The ultimate benefit of the ICH Q3D guidelines is simple and profound. It leads to safer medicines for all of us. By replacing outdated, imprecise methods with a modern, scientific, and risk-based framework, these guidelines significantly reduce the chance that we will be exposed to harmful levels of metallic impurities when we take a medicine. This is a huge step forward for global public health and patient safety. For patients, the benefits are very direct. Whether you are taking a pill for a short-term illness or a lifelong condition, you can have greater confidence that the product is pure and free from hidden contaminants. This is especially important for the most vulnerable among us: children, the elderly, and people with serious illnesses, whose bodies are less able to cope with toxic substances. ICH Q3D ensures that the focus is not just on whether a medicine works, but also on ensuring it doesn't cause harm through unseen dangers. It provides a global safety net, ensuring a consistent level of quality no matter where in the world the medicine is made or sold. For the pharmaceutical industry, while implementing these guidelines requires a significant investment of time and resources, there are long-term benefits too. Having a single, harmonized set of rules for the whole world makes drug development and registration much more efficient. A company can perform one comprehensive risk assessment that will be accepted by regulators in multiple countries, rather than having to meet a patchwork of different national requirements. This streamlines the process, reduces duplication of effort, and ultimately helps to get new, safe medicines to patients faster. It fosters a culture of quality and proactive risk management. In conclusion, ICH Q3D represents a quiet revolution in how we ensure the purity of our medicines. It is a testament to what can be achieved when scientists, regulators, and industry work together towards a common goal. It moves us away from a simple test and pass mentality to a more intelligent system of understanding and controlling risks from the very beginning. The next time you take any medicine, you can feel a little more secure, knowing that there is a robust global system like ICH Q3D working behind the scenes, diligently protecting your health from the hidden danger of elemental impurities.